Justin Trudeau has no credibility when it comes to managing an immigration system. All you have to do is look at the illegal border crossing crisis at Roxham Road. So when Justin Trudeau announced this week that he would be bringing 350,000 new people to Canada, I knew we had to speak up. So Canada's Conservatives, for so many reasons, oppose this particular plan. And this morning I held a press conference in Ottawa to outline all the reasons why and what Canada's Conservatives would do differently. And the difference is stark. It's a bit of a long watch, but I encourage you to stay tuned because it answers a lot of the questions that many of you have raised in comment sections on my social media pages, emails that I've received in my office, as well as many of the questions that I've had with industry groups and various other stakeholders over the last month as part of my Pathway to Canada tour. Have a watch.
In late August of this year, the Angus Reid Institute polled Canadians and found that 49% wanted a reduction in Justin Trudeau's 2018 target of 310,000 immigrants, reduced to a lower level. By contrast, in 2014, only 36% said it should be reduced. This survey marked a significant attitudinal change from Canadians from the immigration system managed under our former Conservative government to Justin Trudeau's current policies. Today, Justin Trudeau has released his pre-election immigration intake targets, and the numbers are actually increased to 350,000 for 2019. To evaluate whether or not this is an appropriate decision and what a Conservative government would do, it's important to first start by evaluating the reasons why Canadians now have a significantly reduced appetite for increased immigration levels under a Justin Trudeau-led government. First, Canadians accept immigration when certain criteria are met by those seeking to enter the country and by the government that is overseeing that process. Canadians expect those seeking to enter our country to do so lawfully, not abuse the generosity of any of our immigration processes or social programs, and they expect newcomers to integrate into Canada's social and economic fabric. If a government allows those criteria to be overridden, Canadians lose confidence in the immigration system itself and want less immigration. Justin Trudeau has failed in this case, and as such, has lost social license to increase immigration levels in Canada. This is largely due to the fact that Trudeau has implemented a new stream of immigration that has a zero-day wait time, has no criteria for entry, has an enormous cost to the Canadian taxpayer, has no integration metrics, and involves entering Canada illegally. Of course, I am referring to the stream of entry at Roxham Road near Laval, Quebec, where tens of thousands of people who have reached the safety of upstate New York are allowed by Trudeau to abuse the generosity of Canada's asylum system. Having reached upstate New York, these people are not fleeing persecution and should not be treated as such by Justin Trudeau. Instead of instituting policy to deter and stop people from entering Canada this way, and subsequently putting an enormous strain on the social welfare system that is paid for by Canadian taxpayers to first help Canadians in need, Trudeau has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make this system permanent. For example, in this year's Supplementary Estimates A, Trudeau has spent $50 million on temporary accommodations, read hotels, for these illegal border crossers. This is wrong, and to be crystal clear, Canada's Conservatives vehemently oppose this blatant abuse of our immigration and social welfare programs. Justin Trudeau has no plan to remove them, even though many of them do not have a valid reason to be in Canada. He has no plan on how to pay for them while they're here. He's allocated a significant amount of resources, including processing capacity at the Immigration Department, to this new immigration stream. In the meantime, those seeking to enter Canada legally are facing increasing wait times, and worst, the world's most vulnerable people, including genocide victims in Iraq, get a cold shoulder from this Prime Minister. In fact, when you examine the breakdown of the number of privately sponsored refugees and government-sponsored refugees in the supplementary note to this Levels plan, the numbers stagnate over 3 years, while the number of protected persons, the category for illegal border crossers, continues to rise. The spots that should have been reserved for the world's most vulnerable are being given to those who don't play by the rules and have reached upstate New York. These spots could also be given to reunify family members with new Canadians who are working hard to bring them to this country legally. This is wrong. Trudeau will have no social license to increase immigration levels in Canada until he rectifies this situation, because it demonstrates misplaced priorities, helps the wrong people, and incents the abuse of our system. On to economic immigration. In the past, Trudeau has made the claim that his humanitarian immigration programs will both bolster the Canadian economy. He cannot make the argument that allowing immigration through his illegal border crossing program helps the Canadian economy because he does not track how many of these people are employed, and if they are employed, if they are potentially competing with Canadians for jobs. He doesn't track the total social welfare costs associated with the same. He also cannot make the argument that Canada should be helping these people regardless of if they work or not, because they are not fleeing persecution, as evidenced by his own support of the Safe Third Country Agreement, but failure to extend it across the entire Canadian-U.S. land border. This failure extends to other humanitarian cohorts as well. Data on the integration of the Syrian refugee cohort is limited, where it exists at all. The most recent data that the Minister has provided Parliament suggests that 90% of government-sponsored Syrian refugees are unemployed and require social welfare support. An article this week suggested that 1/4 of Ottawa's homeless shelter capacity was filled by asylum seekers, and Trudeau will have to pledge hundreds of millions of dollars to the provinces to deal with the cost of housing and providing social welfare to those who are entering Canada illegally at Roxham Road. Similarly, Trudeau's immigration levels report has no information on how the government arrived at its economic immigration levels. The report contains no information on how the provinces or industry were consulted or how this information was translated into the levels. Further, Trudeau has decreased the amount of points a potential economic immigrant needs to enter Canada in relation to having a firm job offer, without showing Canadians how these immigrants are being matched to available jobs or sectors with labour needs in real time. It's impossible for Trudeau to make the claim that this levels plan will benefit the Canadian economy without this data or a more robust process for consultation. Further, this levels plan shows that Trudeau is allowing nearly a 250,000 people to act as temporary foreign workers in Canada. The low-skilled stream of this program is rife with abuse in terms of its ability to depress wages and working conditions, failure to protect the rights of workers, and enablement of not matching out-of-work Canadians with available jobs. For those employers who actually have a business case to use it, the process is cumbersome, slow, and overly punitive. That this government has made no move to radically change Canada's economic dependence on this abusive and ill-thought-out system also undermines the credibility of the numbers in this levels report. Perhaps the most questionable component of this document is the fudge statistics contained therein related to language acquisitions, one of the key indicators of a newcomer's ability to integrate in Canada. The first thing you see when you open the report are shiny statistics that paint a very rosy picture, but when you dive in, you realize that Trudeau is trying to take credit for the work of others. For example, the report cites a 2016 census study that found that 93% of immigrants to Canada speak English or French. However, this category includes anyone alive who came to Canada at any point over any time in the past, not those who came under Justin Trudeau's government. You find the actual numbers on language acquisitions buried in the supplementary notes of the report. The numbers from 2017 show over 20% of newcomers don't know English or French, and within that, half of refugees resettled to Canada don't speak one of our official languages. How are they supposed to work or become self-sufficient without this critical skill? How much will it cost taxpayers to provide training for the skill, and why has Trudeau omitted this from his plan? Further, the Auditor General recently found that Trudeau is not managing language training properly. For example, he didn't set service standards, so he doesn't even know the success rate of the programs currently on offer, and that Canadian taxpayers are footing the bill for. If Trudeau wanted to be honest, he would provide the percentage of newcomers that acquired one of the official languages since landing in Canada under his government. In short, these levels are not credible and do nothing to reverse the trend of Canadians' decreased appetites for increased immigration levels. Trudeau cannot say that his immigration levels are helping the world's most vulnerable, because they are not. He cannot say that his levels are helping to bolster the economy, because he has no data to show for it. Justin Trudeau has no credibility to set Canada's immigration levels. So what would a Conservative government do differently, and what levels would we set? At the end of August, I stood in this very room and outlined some of the key changes an Andrew Scheer government would make to Canada's immigration system. To recap, our approach to setting immigration levels would first recognize that how we allow people to enter the country and who we allow to do so matters. Justin Trudeau has failed to recognize this principle. We would end the practice of setting immigration levels like an auction for votes or for a seat on the UN Security Council. We would immediately seek to decrease the number of people entering Canada illegally via upstate New York and subsequently claiming asylum. We would do so by seeking to close the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement and significantly expedite the processing and removal of those who Trudeau has allowed in. The lengthy process between entering Canada illegally and being removed, all while being able to access social welfare programs, is an incentive for this behavior that must be ended. It is not acceptable that Trudeau has planned on this being a permanent situation. We would also establish a set of metrics to determine what Canada's immigration levels should be, based on transparent principles, with integration and self-sufficiency at the forefront. For Canadians to see immigration as a positive thing, they should be able to easily see the employment and social welfare statistics for immigration levels for any given year and stream. We would also establish a transparent system for consulting with industry and the provinces to set immigration levels. We would focus on setting humanitarian immigration levels that focus on higher utilization of the privately sponsored refugee program, where individual Canadians, through their own funds, not taxpayer funds, support the entry of refugees, and would restrict the utilization of government-assisted refugee programs to instances of the 4 atrocity crimes. We would end the practice of allowing the United Nations to be the sole agency for selecting humanitarian immigrants to be resettled to Canada, and we would not cede our sovereign right in setting immigration levels to this agency. We would transform the temporary foreign worker program and not shy away from difficult conversations around employment insurance, working conditions, and wage depression associated with the program, and other reasons why Canadians don't take or aren't skilled for certain jobs, and ensure that Canadians are first matched with available work. We would also change our immigration programs and support to better focus on economic immigration levels and retention to regions with acute labour shortages. It's not enough to cite this Conference Board of Canada and saying that the economy needs more immigrants. Immigration levels should be set to ensure that newcomers are matched with jobs in regions where Canadians are not out of work. In short, a Conservative government would not pull a number out of the air in terms of how many people we would allow into the country. The number we would present to Canadians would be shaped by the above principles and would be answered as follows. There are X number of job vacancies in a certain industry or region. Here's why Canadians aren't doing these jobs. Here's what we did to try and fix that problem. And as such, we are allowing X number of people to enter Canada with X skill set to fill this need. Then we would track our outcomes to make sure our programs are working and adjust as necessary. On the humanitarian side, we would not allow people to enter Canada illegally and abuse our asylum system. The target number for that stream of entry should be 0. All other targets would be met by gaining consensus from Canadians that we should help a certain cohort of people, for example, genocide survivors, and then gaining consensus from Canadians on how much money we should spend to support the initiative in terms of the cost of integrating into Canada and the context of putting the needs of Canadians first. We shouldn't take a false morally superior position that excludes Canadians from helping to decide how our humanitarian immigration system should function and be funded. The levels Justin Trudeau has put forward in this report are unfocused, unplanned, and ill thought out. There is no justification included herein on how he would change the system to make it more just, fair, or lawful. It is simply a continuation of his failed immigration policies. The reality is that Canada can't sustain high immigration levels under Justin Trudeau's failed immigration policies. A change in government must occur before Canadians will be able to regain faith in the integrity of our immigration system. For all the reasons I've given you today, the Conservative Party of Canada strongly opposes the levels set out in this report.